You should, if you haven't said it already, which you should, meaning you should be in the habit of saying brachos and Kriya Shema before Shir, but Sefer Kriya Shema is relatively soon after the end of Shir. So, I can't look it up now because my phone is busy being a YouTube.
Maybe you can mention the administration, because I don't know if all students realize they have to say Shema before Shacharis. I don't know if everyone knows.
So I'll ask the powers that be to put it up on the...
It's posted in the notes. It says Kriya Shema is like around 8:30.
Then you have to read the notes.
Okay. So, what we saw yesterday was the Rebbe's discussion of how to make a living properly and how to realize that the source of our living is the Eibishter. And therefore, a person has to involve himself in making a living in a proper way and in an honest way, but in a way that he has left, so to speak, his essential intellectual and emotional energies and focus for other things, as opposed to simply making a living. As we talked about yesterday in the name of the Maharal, that we weren't given intellect to make a living, because if that's the case, then intellect is the biggest curse imaginable, because we wouldn't have to make a living if we didn't have intellect. We'd live under a tree and eat berries. So the proper use of those energies and that focus is a real Aveda. And everybody loses that focus sometimes, right? And gets a little too involved in worrying about financial issues, etc., or the Gashmis in general. But the challenge is there. And the first thing the Rebbe told us is that the Mayim Rabim lo yuchlu l'chabes ha'sa'ava, that the turbulence of life in this world can't ultimately, and the mashal is Mayim Rabim, dafka Mayim, because Mayim would put out the fiery love, the fire of something, but it can't douse the fiery love of the neshama. That level of eish is not affected negatively by fire. By water, which we will see. Okay? It has nothing to do with the American election, but I'm working on very little sleep. So I apologize if now and then the wrong word comes out. I might sound like a presidential candidate or something. But our son was supposed to go last night to Shlichus in Vancouver, and they were flying El Al to LA and LA to Vancouver. And it turns out the Americans have an interesting law that basically no one else does. Even if you are simply connecting in the United States, you need a visa. And their 1-year-old child didn't have a visa for the United States, so they wouldn't let them on the plane. So after schlepping, 20, 40, so about 100 kilos of suitcases to the airport. They got 4 suitcases, blah, blah, blah. They came home at about 3 in the morning, 3:30.
So they just have Israeli citizenship?
No, our son is an American and Israeli. He will become a Canadian soon. I didn't make him a Canadian, but it's easy for him to become a Canadian because I am, so he will. But so he wasn't the problem, and she wasn't the problem. She has a visa. She's been to the Rebbe. All the Babbitches have visas, right? Because they go to the Rebbe all the time. The baby was the problem.
Just has Israeli citizenship right now. That's it. If you're not Canadian, you don't need a visa to.
You don't need an Israeli doesn't need a visa to get into Canada. So the last time they went, they flew through Europe, which is the easiest way to fly. But for whatever reason, the travel agent in Vancouver got them this flight, which is really Chabad. So they're back in our house. All the suitcases were downstairs, opened up to get out to pajamas. Poor kids. I mean, what a... I found them a flight. At about 1 a.m. I found a way to do it. I don't know why the travel agent couldn't book it. But anyway, my wife was laughing at me that I should really be a travel agent. I found them a flight L. They had to get out of here LL. Anyway. America. children were not allowed on their El Al flight last night to Vancouver through LA because their 1-year-old daughter didn't have a visa to connect in LA to go to Canada.
Come on.
Connection, not stay. America is the only place that I know of that you need a visa to connect. I mean,
They should need a visa.
you need a visa. I mean, they could have gotten an ES or something, you know, you need something. You can't just, if you fly from here to Singapore to Australia and don't get out of the airport, the only thing you worry about is Australia. You don't have to, America is not that way. She needs a 1-year-old needed a visa. They won't let them on the plane. They're home. They're back in their house. Brought their suitcases home. The poor kids are now scrambling around. They've got some travel agent in Vancouver scrambling around trying to get them a ticket. So that's why I sound like I sound. Because that was all happening in the middle of the night. It wasn't that I was watching the results. The results in American elections are too slow to watch. So anyway, okay. So, Doc, can I ask you a favor? Could you please close that window? I'm sorry, it is nice, the air, but they're pretty noisy over there. I would imagine within the next 5 or 10 years they'll finish that project and we'll be able to have a little peace and
You
quiet.
want me to go out there and tell them if they don't stop, I'm gonna have to.
How's your Arabic?
That's the problem.
Okay, again, yesterday we learned the Rebbe. I mean, this is a very important mimer, and everybody learns it for a number of reasons. The end is also absolutely astounding, meaning that we're now going to get into Chassidus about why Olam Hazeh looks like it looks. But the first thing the Rebbe told us was how to make a living properly, and what's the proper point of view that we should have as we enter into that very tumultuous reality of trying to figure out how to balance properly Gashmias and Ruchnias and Olam Hazeh. And it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. The first thing I have to understand is, why am I here? Am I here for the Gashmias? Am I here for the Ruchnias? Well, intellectually I know. We're sitting in this room. I assume we all know that we're here for the Ruchnias. We're here to bring about a revelation of Elokus. Okay, I can say that intellectually. So how powerfully do I bring that into my conscious reality so that I live that way? It's a challenge. Okay. But what did the Rebbe tell us? That challenge does not affect the love of the Nefesh Elokis for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nefesh Bahamis, conscious you and me, and we've said this many times, we'll say it again because it's so important. What's Nefesh Bahamis? The source of that experience of I. That person you call I, that experience comes from the Nefesh Bahamis. Nefesh Nefesh Bahamis isn't necessarily bad. It's the source of all sorts of horrible, terrible things that can happen, but it's also the source of all sorts of amazing and incredible things that happen, because every single mitzvah that you do, have done, or will ever do is because your Nefesh Bahamis decided to do the mitzvah. Because conscious you made the decision to put on tefillin, to come to Chassidus, to go help a friend, to give some stock, or whatever it happens to be. Who did that? I did that. Who's I? Nefesh Bahamis. Now, it might very well be that the impetus to do that came from my Nefesh Elokis. That's true. But am I aware of that? Am I conscious of that? Can I access that? Not so easy. So Nefesh Bahamis is just that experience of it's the source of what you and I would call human consciousness. That's the Nefesh Bahamis. Nefesh Elokis is essential me, who I really am. And if you think about it simply, and it really is very, very simple, it's not something, again, obviously if you believe in God and soul and Torah and mitzvahs, right? That who were you before you came into Olam Hazeh? You were Nefesh Elokis. You were a godly soul somewhere, floating around doing whatever godly souls do. Then you came into Olam Hazeh. You were born. Okay, so now we're vargling around in Olam Hazeh, doing whatever we're doing. Right? We're a soul clothed in a body with a Nefesh Bahamis, and we're wondering about airplane flights, Donald Trump, and whatever else gets in the way of what we should really be thinking about. Okay. None of us are leaving, because Be'ez Hashem Mashiach is coming and will be here forever. But all those people who came and left, where are they now? They're Nefesh Elokis in Gan Eden. So who are they really? For who knows how long, a couple of thousand years, they were Nefesh Elokis up there doing whatever a soul does up there. Then they came down into the world. They did their 120 years, and now they're back up there. So who are they? You're going to define them in terms of the 120 years. You're going to define them in terms of the 3,200 years that neshama has been around doing whatever it's been doing. And it might have come up and down a few times, as we know. There's, that could also happen, however that works, right? So who am I really? I'm that neshama. That's who I was. That's who I will be. That's who I still am. Okay. So I have to keep that in mind and realize what the neshama is really interested in. It loves God. It's absolutely head over heels in love with the Eibishter and just wants to express Him all day long. But all this other stuff gets in the way. Does it affect the neshama so the neshama loses its love? No. That's what we learned yesterday. Does it affect my nefesh abahami so conscious me might be disconnected from essential me? Absolutely 100%. It's pretty hard for that not to happen. That's a very good answer. That's why we learn Chassidus. That's why we do mitzvahs. That's why we're trying to make somehow connect essential me to conscious me so that conscious me becomes simply a conduit for the revelation of essential me. What does essential me want? Good with a capital G, right? Just goodness. Tov. What's Tov? When God looks at something and it's in line with His will, He calls it Tov. That's what we want. That's what my Nefesh Elokis wants. Okay. How is my Nefesh Abahami on board or not? This isn't show and tell, and we don't have to. Okay, sometimes yes, sometimes not. Right? Okay. Now the Rebbe explains something really very fascinating. Shlomo Melech told us that the Mayim Rabim can't douse the love. Therefore, obviously, we've all learned enough Gemara to realize that must be, there's an a priori assumption that it could, such that he has to tell me it can't. Because if it's obvious, he doesn't have to tell me, right? Oh, okay. So now the Rebbe is going to deal with that, because that's a very interesting question. Why do I have the a priori assumption that the Nefesh Abahamis that the Mayim Rabim might be able to douse the love of the Nefesh Elokis? Right? Let's see. Now we're going to have to learn about that famous reality called Shviras HaKelim, which everybody knows about but might not necessarily understand as clearly as they would like to. The Chiddush, that novel, the novel reality of this, such that Shlomo Melech has to tell it to me, the Yedua, it's known. Now this might contradict something that you've learned. Don't worry, by the end of this chapter, the Rebbe will explain the source of the neshama in line with what you've probably learned. But in the meantime, the Rebbe is going to tell us something very interesting, which is also true, obviously. The Sharash Mayim Rabim, the source of Mayim Rabim, Shehu Tirdas HaParnasa, which we said in the previous 2 chapters, is Tirdas HaParnasa, the troubles that a person might have making a living. Right? Where does that come from? Why is it that our reality is such that we experience such concealment? Why don't we see what reality really is, which is a Kadosh Baruch Hu creating the world, giving the world vitality every macrosecond, and orchestrating events constantly? Why don't we see that? One of the reasons we don't see it, probably I'll ask you that. Why don't we see godly light in this world? What Hasidic concept will help me understand why I don't see godly light in this world? Tzimtzum. That's the Tzimtzum. Okay, and that's true. Tzimtzum. The light's diminished, 100%. No question. But Tzimtzum alone is not responsible for the experience that you and I have of ourselves and of the reality around us. There's another event that's part and parcel of that experience, and that's called Shviras HaKelim. Okay, and we'll see what that is. Simply, on the most simple level imaginable, why is Tzimtzum not enough if you think about it just in the most simple, straightforward way? Well, probably the most mitzumsum, right, diminished physical light that you and I experience is starlight. Right? Meaning, if you've ever been outside, out of a city where there aren't artificial lights, somewhere in the desert, on a clear, usually winter night, because in the summer it's not clear enough because there hasn't been enough rain to clear all the dust out of the air. If you're probably in Sweden, it's all year round. And no, seriously, here it can't, but in where I grew up also it's all year round. If you're out of the city, there's no lights, and it's a completely clear night. What do you see? You see clusters. You don't just see stars. You see clusters of stars. You see it's like unbelievable. It's amazing what you see up there. Just a blanket of white. Absolutely amazing. Okay. What do you see in front of your face? You literally might not be able to see your hand there. There's no moon. There can't be a moon either. Then there's going to be too much light. No moon, meaning it's a certain time of the month. There's no moon. All there is stars. Now, that's really interesting. If you think about that, just in the simplest terms, what am I seeing? I'm not really seeing, I mean, obviously I am, right? In physics, I know I am. I know that starlight is traveling from that star and it's reaching my eye. I get that. But my experience is not of starlight, but only of the star itself, which is really a fascinating thing if you think about it, right? All I'm seeing is the source of the light. I'm not experiencing the passage of that light from that place to my eye. It's black. Sunlight, I see that it's light the whole way. Right? This kind of light also lights up everything in the way. Okay, starlight is the one thing where all I'll see is the star. So even though that light is incredibly diminished, so that it doesn't help me read, it doesn't help me see, it's an enveloping darkness, even though that the whole sky is covered with these stars. That Tzimtzum, as powerful as it is, didn't bring about a situation that I wasn't aware of the source of the light. I'm aware only of the source of light, which is really interesting. I'm not even aware of the light. I'm only aware of its source. I look up and I see the star. Now, of course, what I'm seeing is starlight. I understand that. But my experience of it is I'm just seeing stars. I'm not seeing any light. I'm just seeing stars. I know in physics that's impossible to say that, but that's my experience. So Tzimtzum doesn't necessarily bring about a situation where I'm completely oblivious to the source of the reality that I'm experiencing. That's why I'm bringing that motion. All I'm aware of is the source. I don't even see the light, I just see the star. So mitzum sam, the light. Can't read by it. Right? Moonlight's different. You can read by moonlight on a nice full moon, clear sky. Remember once driving down to California, we were driving through a forest in Northern California with our kids. It's 40, no, it couldn't be that much. Whatever, 32 years ago, 3 years ago. Driving in the forest in the summertime, full moon. I just wanted to check it out. My wife let me do this. Right? I turned off the lights to the car to see if I could drive by moonlight. No problem.
Well,
no problem. Why is it dangerous? Because no one can see me. Right? The car coming the other way can't see me, so it's dangerous. But there was not, I did it for about 30 seconds. Just this, can I navigate this road? Obviously, I slowed down, but can I navigate this road by moonlight? Yes, no problem. Moonlight can be very, very bright. Starlight? Not a chance. Black. Okay, where you are. So there's another event, and it's not that it happened, because the source of the event is the level beyond time, which is very hard for us to understand. But this is an event that happens constantly within the context of our appreciation of the passage of time. But up there's no passage of time, they're beyond time. In the world called Eilam HaToyu, the world of chaos, an event happens. It's called Shviras HaKelim. And what does that mean? That means that the light and Kelim emanate down, and specifically the Kelim, we'll talk about that reality emanates down into this world, and the language in Chassidus, I'll say it first in what you'll see in a Mayim, and then we'll translate it, in an oifen of shvira, in a way of brokenness. In other words, that's how we perceive reality. Now, what does that mean? Let's see. Okay? Let's just see what the Rebbe is going to mention to you in a second. And then he's also going to mention tikkun and explain why it is, I might think, that the Mayim Rabim would be able to affect the neshama. Okay, then we'll go back and we'll explain what Toyu is. Let's just see how it works in the context of the Mayim. So the Rebbe says, the source of the Mayim Rabim, the source of that experience of concealment, hu bebechinas Toyu, comes from Eilam HaToyu, and Eilam HaToyu is a godly world. Up there, there's an event called Shviras HaKelim, that's true. That event brings about this, and we're going to explain why. That event brings about this reality called Yesh. But up there, it's a holy yesh. So it's called yesh to kedusha. So so it's a holy place. It's a godly place. But in that place, there's something called shviras hakelim, which we'll discuss in a minute. But that world, Tayu, which is the source of the perception of reality that we have in this world, shekodem letikun. It's a higher, more powerful level than the world of tikkun. The world of tikkun is a synonym in this context for fixedness, but meaning, so to speak, the kelim are fixed, they're no longer broken. And what's that? That's Elam Atzilus. Now, usually when you and I talk about the source of the neshama, in Chassidus we'll talk about the source being obviously in Atzmus, in the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's what the Rebbe is going to say at the end of the paragraph. But simply when we talk about the source of the neshama, we talk about Elam Atzilus. That's why you say every single day, and I hope you've already said it today, because in addition to saying Kriya Shema before class, we should also say Birchas HaShachar before class. We have to say Birchas HaTorah. We're not allowed to learn Torah without saying Birchas HaTorah. So you say every day, Neshama shenasati bi taharahi. It's tahor. Comes from Elam Atzilus. Atabarasa, you created it. Comes through Elam Abriya. Atayatzarta, you formed it. Comes through Elam Yitzira. Tanafachta bi, you blew it into me, into Elam Hasiyah. We go through the four worlds. Taharahi, that's Atzilus. Barasa, Yatzarta, Nafachta bi is Elam Hasiyah, this world. So we chart the root of the neshama from Elam Atzilus down into this world. We'll talk about what that means later when we see that there's also another source. Okay, we'll distinguish between those two sources, the neshama, but not now. So the Rebbe just said something quite astounding. The experience that you and I have of reality such that godliness could be extremely concealed, and not only could godliness be concealed, but I could actually think that what I'm looking at exists by virtue of itself and isn't sourced in anything higher than it. It just is. That comes from a place called Toyu. And that place, that's the source of Mayim Rabim. That's the source of the trials and tribulations that you have in balancing Gashmias and godliness, physicality and God. That place is higher than the source of the neshama. So therefore, what might I think? You can affect the neshama. It's more powerful, so to speak. You could affect the neshama. And in terms of conscious reality, it does, right? Because our neshama has a very hard time overcoming that perception and penetrating into our conscious reality to allow us to experience elokus, as opposed to experience physicality. So I might think that since the source of the Mayim Rabim is higher than this, and now just do the math of it without understanding it. We'll understand it once we explain. We understand what Tayu means. But what the source of the Mayim Rabim is a place called Tayu. The source of the Neshama is a place called Tikkun. Tayu is higher than Tikkun, so therefore Tayu should be able to overcome Tikkun and wipe it out, douse it. Why not? That's why it's called Mayim Rabim. Liyoisam, by virtue of the fact that they are Rabim, they're many, Gam Mitzvah Shorshim Makarim, also in terms of their source. I mean, it comes from a very, very, very powerful place. I mean, you might have noticed in your life that perception of reality that we have that might not include God so obviously. Now, you and I, Baruch Hashem, the reason we're sitting in this room is we know that's not true, but okay, it's not that that's not a very easy perception of reality to have. That's a pretty powerful perception, and whatever force in reality it is that's allowing for that perception is rather powerful. It's not that you blow it away and away it goes like some little fly on your arm. No. And it might even be that sometimes, and we're wrong when we say this, but that's what this Mimer's already taught us, but that doesn't mean that there aren't times when we feel, to a certain degree, almost powerless against that force. Right? I mean, I think that's an honest thing. Sometimes you just can't think this one's too hard. How am I supposed to deal with this? Okay. So obviously it's coming from a pretty powerful place that could bring about such an incredibly powerful reality.
Rabbi,
Yeah?
I guess I missed something because I don't understand how you say that the nefesh comes from total that it's not.
Tikkun.
But I thought it comes from actually the Havaya, the high level, I mean, the highest level of our nefesh.
It comes from Atzmus,
Yeah.
which is higher than Tikkun. I agree. Right, the Rebbe's going to say that later. We're going to have to understand why the Rebbe talked about it in this context. But is the source of the Neshama Tikkun? Yes, we say it every single day. Neshama Shenasata Taharahi. It comes from Elam Tikkun. And it descends down into Elam Hazan. That's what we say every single day. Why? Because the Neshama is a spitting image of Tikkun. Where do you come from? How about your parents? Is that true? That's true. And it might even be your spitting image of your father. Right? So, now you also know that you come from God. That's also true. Okay, but the revealed reality of you, what's the source of the revealed reality of you in the simplest, most straightforward way? Your parents. Yes, of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But even a Chazal, when they talk about it, they say there's three shutfim, there's three partners. It's not that, no, it's only God and your parents are irrelevant. That's not true. There's a third partner with your parents making you. That's interesting, right? That Chazal doesn't just say, nah, parents don't exist. That's all just, that's not true, because I look like them. I look like them, I might act like them. Okay, I might act like them, and that might be more nurture than nature. But there's a nature that I look like them. Why? Well, this is my mother's nose. You've never met her, but she's responsible for this. I still love her. It's not a problem, right? But that comes from the shipper side, not the Kaplan side. There's no doubt about that. Right? Okay, fine. It's not the first thing every Jew does when they, have a new baby. They look at the baby the first time. They look right at the nose. How's the nose? And especially if it's a girl, is she going to find a shidduch or not? Let's look at her nose. First thing. And if it's a small nose, okay. Success. Say that. So where's that come from? Well, it's DNA, right? Whose DNA? My parents' DNA. That's really my source. That time, there's no question. Okay. So what's, so to speak, the DNA of the neshama? Elam Atikan, Elam Atzilus. The neshama is a spitting image of Elam Atzilus. Like a child could be a spitting image of a father. Does the neshama come from a higher place? Absolutely. And that's going to be what the Rebbe answers. And I've just given you the answer to the question we'll obviously ask. Well, why did the Rebbe ask the question if he knows that there's an answer that it really comes from a higher place? Well, it's true that it comes from a higher place called Etzem. You're right, absolutely. From the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no question. But it's also true that the revealed reality of the neshama down here in Elam Hazeh is very powerfully connected to a level called Tikkun. And you say it every day in davening. You don't say neshama shenasatabi comes from atzmus. You say neshama shenasatabi tahari, it comes from tikkun. That's what we say. Oh, because that's very much indicative of the revealed reality of the neshama. Just like revealed me, where do I come from? My father, my mother. Essential me, where do I come from? Well, that's my never, that's the Eibishter. That's like directly the Eibishter. There's no parents in there. All they are is making they're responsible for helping to make the kli where that neshama goes into. But the neshama itself, they have nothing to do with. Well, they do. They have what level of neshama are they able to draw down when they're in the process of bringing about the creation of this child. And those are the things you learn before you get married as to what Jewish intimacy is all about. What intentions a person should have, okay, etc. So bringing down a neshama. So it is interesting that holy people seem to bring down holy neshamas. Okay, I guess they know something. Second parak of Tanya, but it's also something that everybody has to learn before they get married. So the Rebbe says, let's go a little further, and we'll come back to tell you. V'zera Ravusa, and this is the Chiddush. That the Mayim Rabim can't douse the love, and the rivers don't wash it away. The Hagam, that even though, there's a period in a line and a bit, that even though that even though the source of this concealment, hu bebechinas atoyu, is that level of olam atoyu, and don't worry about what that is, just do the mathematics. That's a higher level, shekodem latikun, which is higher than tikkun, which the Rebbe says now explicitly, which is the shodash of nefesh elokis, the source of the godly soul. Mikol makim, nevertheless, there's a big chiddush. Lo yuchlu l'chabes chos v'sholem es ha'ava. It's not able to douse chos v'sholem, the love shebenevesh elokis. Oh. Okay. So now we understand why Shlomo Melech has to say this. Because I might think that since the source of the Rabim is Toyu, and the source of the Neshama is Tikkun, that Toyu is a higher level and therefore a more powerful level of godly reality than Tikkun, and therefore then the Mayim Rabim could wipe out the love of the Neshama. No, it can't. Okay, so now what do I have to explain? Now that I've explained that, very basic question.
How is that? How is it the lower?
Why not?
Lower.
No, not how it's lower. It's lower. That's what it is.
How can it nonetheless, it's not
Oh,
overpowered by the higher.
Why not? If you're telling me that the source of the Mayim Rabim is higher than the source of the Neshama, so Taka, why doesn't the Mayim Rabim wipe out the love of the Neshama? That's the next thing I have to understand. Okay, but now I've understood why Shlomo Melech has to say what he has to say. Because I might think otherwise. Okay, good. Now, let's tell you, how does it work? Now, the Rebbe didn't mention the word Shvir Sakeli, but that's the event that happens in Olam HaToyu. What's that event about? That event is about what's called Eres Merubim V'Kelim Mu'atim. Very powerful light and smaller vessels that can't contain the light, so they burst. What's an example of that sometimes? Children. Right? Children often experience or express very chaotic behavior. Why? Because they often don't have the kelim, which you and I would generally say is the intellectual appreciation of reality, so they don't have the kelim to deal with certain extremely powerful emotional energies. Right? So children are up and down. When they're happy, they're unbelievably happy. Children are much more midas and much less seichel, right? That's how children work. A lot more midas and a lot less seichel. So if you expect your 23-year-old son to run up to you and give you a hug and say, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," so excited that you came home every day, that's not going to happen. Why not? He doesn't love you. He loves you very much. He's 23. That's not what 23-year-olds do. But that's what 3-year-olds do. When you come home, your 3-year-old goes, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," and he runs over and he's so excited and he grabs your legs and you pick him up and he gives you a hug and he's so excited. Right? Why? Midas. Kids are all midas. That's why a child might experience chos v'sholem v'chos v'sholem shviras hakelim if they're faced with a very traumatic experience. Right? Whereas an adult will hopefully have the intellectual ability to deal with this difficult, this very traumatic experience in a relatively, hopefully completely, but at least relatively healthy way and be able to create kelim that will somehow be able to process that incredibly powerful light of this horrible and traumatic event, the passing of a loved one. Adults are supposed to be able to deal with that. That doesn't mean it's easy and they like it and they're enjoying it, but they're able to deal with it because they have a place to come to an appreciation of the fact, well, that's part of the way life works until we bring Mashiach, etc. Okay, so they can put that, even if it's chos v'sholem, something very, very tragic like the passing of a child. Not that chos v'sholem anybody should ever have to experience such a thing. Okay, but even the passing of the child, which is probably the most difficult emotional thing that any parent would ever have to deal with, even that, the parent can put that in a certain perspective so that they can continue their life successfully even after as difficult an event as that. And in our day, I think we find it even more difficult. Right? Why? Well, because it's so unusual. Whereas if you go back from 100 years ago back for 600 years, how many families were there in the history of the world that didn't lose a child at some point? Very rare, right? Very rare. Okay, so now that's why we're so affected of it, because Baruch Hashem, modern medicine, has made it such that it's perfectly reasonable to expect someone to reach the age of 20. And once you reach the age of 20, so then most people last for a while. The problem is getting to 20, not getting some chas v'sholom. I mean, pneumonia, right? A kid got pneumonia. That's the end. No antibiotics. End of child. When were antibiotics? When was the first antibiotics?
1900s. They did 1800s.
18, late 18s, there were already antibiotics. Okay, so what, 150 years? Okay. Till antibiotics, so pneumonia, finished. Pneumonia? Pretty common for a kid to get pneumonia, right? It can happen. But Baruch Hashem, take care of it. So, very, very, very powerful light might break vessels. So now, what's the mushal of a broken vessel? And why is it that that's the mushal used, that's the parable used to help us appreciate the experience of what you and I call yesh? Yesh is a sense of reality that seems disconnected from any source, that it just is. Doesn't have a source in a higher place, right? And that's the ultimate in concealment. Revelation means I see the source of the thing that I'm looking at. I realize it has a source in the level beyond what I see, right? If there's revelation now, so I see the source of this is a level of godliness that's giving this thing existence. Well, I don't see that. I'm living in concealment, so I just see this thing. I might appreciate that intellectually, but I don't see it with my physical eyes. Okay. So what allows for that? Shviras HaKelim. Okay, so how does that work? So imagine first it's amazing because it's a Mishnah in Shabbos. Here, this is a plate. It's a Mishnah in Masechah Shabbos. This is a plate. If Reuven takes this plate, that looks more like a plate. If Reuven takes this plate outside from Reshusa Yochid into Reshusa Rabim on Shabbos, what's the halacha? What happened? He transgressed the Nisur D'Oraisa. Right? Is he Chayav Misa or not? It's a machlekes whether or not Haitzah is only a lav or you're Chayav Misa. Okay, say it. But he transgressed a Torah prohibition on Shabbos. Okay. Next thing Reuven does, he takes a split pea in his hand. Takes a split pea out of the jar and he puts it in his hand. Right? Those things you use to make pea soup. Okay, half a pea. He takes that, or a pea. A hummus bean. He takes a hummus bean and he walks outside holding the hummus bean intentionally. He can't wait to take the hummus bean outside to show his friend who's standing outside, I have the most beautiful hummus beans. I'll bring one. Okay, what's the halacha of that? Potter of halasa. He's potter. He's not obligated. He's not obligated to any punishment whatsoever because it's mutter d'oraisa. It's also d'rabbanan. It's a rabbinic prohibition. Why is it mutter d'oraisa? There's no measure. There's no shiur. He didn't. That's food, but that's not called food. One chickpea is not called food, right? When you eat matzah, how much matzah do you have to eat in order to do an action called eating? A kazayas. But you got a certain amount of matzah in a certain amount of time. One bite of matzah is not called eating matzah. One chickpea is not called food. So you didn't take anything out that you're not. Now, Minatara, it's mutter. It's mutter. It's not only like not. It's mutter Minatara to carry that thing out. Along came Chazal and said, no, don't do that, or else people are going to be taking chickpeas out all day. Okay, so obviously we know why Chazal would answer that. Okay, but that's the category in Hilchos Shabbos called Potter Aval Oser. Then the Rambam explains at the beginning of Hilchos, it's in all the Mishnayos, but the Rambam explains this in the beginning of Hilchos Shabbos, that when I say Oser, that means it's an Issur D'Oraisa. It's a Torah prohibition. When I say Mutter, it's Mutter. When I say Potter, I mean it's Mutter D'Oraisa, but Oser D'Rabbanan. So Potter means Potter Aval Oser. You're not allowed to do it, but you're not Chayiv Misa if you do. Okay. Third thing the Mishnah talks about. What if he puts the chickpea on the plate? Now, the plate alone, let's say you're Chayav Misa for Eitzah, just to make it better, right? He's Chayav Misa if he carries the plate outside. He's Potter if he carries the chickpea outside. He puts the chickpea on the plate. He walks outside. The Mishnah says, Potter af al hakli. He's Potter even for the plate. Shehi tefela lo. Because the plate is bottled to the food in it. Right? If someone comes up to you with lunch and they made you a plate of lunch, they don't say, "Here, I have a plastic plate for you." "Oh, here, I got you some fish and couscous, and there's some salad on the side." How'd they give that to you? Not in your lap. They give it to you on a plate. But the plate is completely bottled to the fish and the couscous. I'm not interested in the plate. I'm interested in the fish and the couscous. I just can't get the fish and the couscous unless I put it on a plate. So that's the nature of a kli. A kli is all about that which is in it. Or on it. But okay, now when you're talking about elokus, so what's the whole function of a kli? To reveal a certain aspect of godly light. And we've talked about that many times. Right? A kli reveals a certain relatively finite expression of godly energy, godly reality. So in Eilam Atzilus, the kli of Chokhmah, what does it reveal? Chokhmah. What doesn't it reveal? It doesn't reveal chesed. Is there chesed in that infinite godly light before it becomes clothed in the kli called Chokhmah, which is the sphere of Chokhmah? Yeah, of course there is. Is it being revealed now? No. If you walk to Eilam Atzilus, what do you see? 10 different expressions of godly reality. Now, it's clear that they're all one, but you'll still see 10 different expressions of it. You'll see a sphere called Chokhmah, you'll see a sphere called Bina, you'll see a sphere called Das, you'll see something called Chesed, something called Gvura, different expressions of godly reality, and those different expressions are dependent upon the Kli. Just like we've talked about color, right? What expression of light does this book reveal? Red. Why? Because this Kli is a red Kli. It doesn't absorb it, it reflects it. So the colorless light out here, the red in that light is revealed by this Kli. There is red in that light, you and I know that. How do I know that? Well, one of the ways you know it is by virtue of the fact that this thing's red. If there weren't red in light, then this thing couldn't be red. So if I'm in a laboratory and some scientist has figured out a way to block all the red photons from shining on this book, this would be as gray as this. The red wouldn't show up, it would just be gray like this. Right? Okay, but he didn't. He let the red photons go through, so the red photons bounce off this and go back to your eye, and you experience red. What happened to blue, yellow, and all of the other infinite expressions of color that exist in this light and potential, the light that's out here? What happens? They're absorbed by that and disappear and are hidden. So the Kli reveals one specific aspect of light and hides all other. So in a slightly different way, the Kli reveals a finite expression of light and hides the infinite possibilities of light's expression. That's what it does. Okay, good. That's what Kalim do. Look on your page. What have you got? You've got a bunch of things called Kalim. What are they called in other words? Oisius, letters. What do letters do? Letters, when ordered properly in a state of tikkun, in a state of fixedness, when letters are ordered properly, what do they reveal? Words. What do the words reveal?
Concepts.
An idea, concepts. Right? What don't they reveal, so to speak, themselves? If I were to ask you what's on this page and you were to tell me 6 lameds, 12 mems, 13 samach, so then you should be in a rubber room because you're a maniac, right? Okay, so what is on this page? There's an idea on this page. But and it really isn't, what's the vehicle, what's the vessel, what's the kli for the revelation of that idea? Well, those are called oisius. So now, these oisius, some of us might find challenging to understand because I don't know necessarily how all these oisius work. Whereas if it were in Swedish, you'd understand it. I would look at it and go, I haven't got a clue what is happening on this page, right? Because this kli isn't revealing any light to me because I don't know how to use the kli. But there's a kli on the page in Swedish explaining exactly the same thing that's on this page in Lashon HaKodesh. And David would understand it and we wouldn't. Okay. That's okay, I have no problem with that. But they're going to be ordered in the way they have to be ordered in Swedish in order to make sense. And if they're ordered in some chaotic order, they won't make sense. Okay, now, but there's even more than chaotic, because when we say Elam Atayah, we're not talking about chaotic light, we're talking about broken vessels. Okay, so now let's break these vessels. Let's take it's easier for you because I have a book, right? Let's imagine that I'm taking a scissors and I'm cutting along every line on your Mayim. And then I'm cutting in between each letter, and we could break up the letters also, but we're not going to do that, right? And I have a pile of letters on the table. I have now broken the kalim. even though really I didn't, because each letter is its own kli. But you can cut up the letter also. You cut up the aleph, and you have 2 yuds and a vav. But forget that. It's easier this way in the mashal. So I now have a pile of letters on the table. Now, the first letter on this page is a resh, which is part of the word rak, which is part of a sentence explaining how to properly navigate gashmias and ruchnias in your life. That's what that resh is all about. Okay. It's part of the word rak. It's part of a sentence, it's part of a paragraph, it's part of a mayim. When I pick up the resh, it's now broken. What does it say to me? I am a resh. That's all it says. All it says is I am. What does it not do? Reveal the light that it's ultimately supposed to reveal. This resh is supposed to reveal the light in that sentence, in that paragraph, be part of the revelation of the light that's revealed in that paragraph. But this resh, now that it's a broken kli, what does it reveal? Itself. Manyen, right? It's really interesting. All it reveals is itself. A broken vessel doesn't reveal the light it's destined to reveal. It just reveals itself. That's why that's why the mashal used for the bringing into being of the reality that you and I experience is Shrius HaKelim. Because what do we experience? Sound bites of reality, disconnected pieces of reality. We don't see the big picture. We don't see the unity of it all. We see the separateness and a certain level chaos of it all. Why? Shrius HaKelim. Broken vessels, meaning that event up there called Shrius HaKelim, it's not that it happened once because it's a level beyond time. All godly reality, as it emanates from higher levels down into this world, it emanates down into this world in an oifen. It goes through that process called Shrius HaKelim, which means that you and I experience reality as broken. We don't think it's broken. We think this is the way it is. But we experience it as revealing itself. Another mashal for the same thing, a jigsaw puzzle. Pick up a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. What does it say? I'm green. I'm green. Okay, but you know it's part of a puzzle. So what do you assume it's probably part of? Grass, right? A field, something like that, right? I mean, that's what you're assuming, right? It might not be, but that's what you're assuming. Okay, and when you make a puzzle, like this, my wife spent many years doing 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles because when she used to nurse the kids, she would do a puzzle while she was nursing the baby, sitting there. Some women read a bit. She would often do jigsaw. She'd also read, but she'd do a lot of 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles, and actually, spent a great deal of time trying to keep the jigsaw puzzle that has 483 pieces done out of the reach of the children. That was always a fun thing in our house. Okay, so now, how do you do a puzzle? You open up the box, you throw the pieces on the ground. What's the first thing you do? Corners and then sides, right? Those are easy. Right, okay, corners and sides. Right. Then what do you do? Now this way, I would have done that, because I'm not a jigsaw puzzle doer, but the jigsaw puzzles doer do something else next, if any of you are jigsaw puzzles. Okay, but there's no ways. It's a picture of a castle. What?
Colors, maybe.
Oh, colors, beautiful. You separate the colors. You put the greens over here, and the yellows over here, and the blues over here, and the grays over here. That's what you do, 100%. Right, that's what you do. So you now have a bunch of piles.
You have experience.
No, but I saw people do it. I had different patients.
I always saw, the only reason I know how to do this is because I watched my wife do this. I've never done this, right? Okay, beautiful. And then what do I do? So then I make the frame, which is relatively easy, right? Sometimes it's relatively easy. And then I start filling in okay, so I pick up a piece that says, I'm green. Okay, so right now it's a broken piece, which means it's expressing its own yeshus. That's all it's expressing, is its own existence. And that is we call yeshus, its own yeshus. I'm green. But what do you and I know? No, this is a piece in a bigger puzzle. And once I put the whole puzzle together, what do I now see and what do I not see? What do I see? The big picture. What don't I see? Each individual piece of the puzzle. Ad kei kach that I'm sure almost all of us, if not all of us, have experienced walking into a room, seeing a picture on the wall that's framed, and only once you get close to it do you realize that it's a puzzle that someone put together and framed on the wall, right? Because what can't you see? You can't see the individual pieces. When you see the big picture, each piece is bottled to the big picture. Oh, beautiful. So another mushal for the idea of Torah and Tikkun. Once it's in a state of Tikkun, you no longer see the yeshus of each piece. You see each piece as it's bottled to the big picture. So you don't see a piece of green, you see grass. You don't see a piece of yellow, you see the sun in the corner. Oh, okay. The mushal of jigsaw puzzle is also very, very interesting if you think about it, you take it a little further. And this has a lot to do with life in general. First of all, now let me. You've done what Shalom said we're supposed to do. We put it in colors. Now what do I do? There is something I do before I start. I might have done it before, but I do it now if I haven't. I look at the picture on the box. Right? I want to know what's the picture supposed to look like. Okay. Now, if you think of that mushal, it's really a fascinating mushal. Life. General framework of life. I might not need the picture on the box to have a general framework of life that's relatively healthy. But to really know where all the pieces of reality are supposed to fit, I have to look at the picture on the box. What's the picture on the box? The Torah. How do I know where the 15th of Tishrei, that piece of time called the 15th of Tishrei, how do I know where that fits, what I'm supposed to do? Oh. There's a picture on the box. It says, "Oh, pick up a green stick and a lemon and shake it because it's sukkahs now." Right? How would I know that? There's no way I would know that. I couldn't guess that. Right? Okay. Now I might be able to guess through a puzzle. I'm sure there are puzzle doers who, at a certain point, stop looking at the picture on the box. And yeah, I mean, they did once when they bought it in the store, but they don't when they as an extra challenge. But the basic framework of life. You know, to be a good, positive person in life, be a good, positive person in life. You know, you don't necessarily have to look at the picture on the box, but to really understand where each piece of your life is supposed to fit, you have to look at the picture on the box, which is called the Torah. Right? Anybody who doesn't know the Torah is a bad person, chas v'sholom, those are wonderful people out there. Right? But they're missing the ability to really put the pieces together and fix it all. Because that's the only place you have to look in the Torah to know where the pieces fit. Okay, that's just a continuation of the mushal. Okay, so we learned three different mushal. I mean, three different pieces of information in terms of our appreciation of how Shviras HaKelim works. The Mishnah in Shabbos, that the Kli is bottled to what's in it. That's when the Kli is in a state of tikkun. Right? It's completely bottled to the light it's supposed to reveal. So the letter on the page. Completely bottled to the idea. I don't see the letters. In English, interestingly enough, I don't even have to see the letters in proper order. Right? Evidently in English, and I've actually, once in the Yeshiva, someone put up a piece of paper on the board with this written this way. In English, evidently, it doesn't work in Hebrew at all. Right? But in English, if you write the first letter and the last letter of every word in the right order, if you write about with an A and a T, it makes no difference whatsoever what you do with the B and the O and the U in the middle. You could write O-U-B. Everybody will read about. Because evidently all we do is we look at the first letter and last, and you can put a piece of paper up and people will read it as quickly as they would read it as if it was in the proper order, if the first and last letter are there, right? And they'll just read right through it, and then at the bottom it'll say, please look at this more carefully and notice the order of the letters, and you look at, wow, you didn't even notice. Okay, but there has to be a certain order. In Lashon HaKodesh, the middle is what it's all about, right? It's only about the middle because the shorish is in the middle. The beginning and the end are just helping you understand how to understand the shorish properly. Right? But we learned the mushal of the plate, the mushal of the letters, the halach of the plate, the mushal of the letters, and the mushal of the jigsaw puzzle. So a broken kli reveals itself. That's why the mushal used for the godly energy that comes into this world to allow you and I to experience reality as we experience it is a mushal Shviras HaKelim. Because you and I look at reality, and it's hard for us to see the big picture. We see the little broken pieces, and the little broken pieces seem to express their own existence as ultimate and true, as opposed to being the part of a bigger picture where that piece of reality I see is bottled to the revelation of the big picture being God, Mashiach, whatever, in whatever context you're looking at it, right? Meaning, in terms of the purpose of creation. Okay, so the big picture is, you might say Mashiach, that's the big picture. Ultimately, what it's all about the revelation of the Eibishter. So, as powerful as that experience is, and it's so powerful because it comes from such a powerful place in Elokus, up there's Shviras HaKelim. There is. That event happens up there. But up there it's called Yesh de Kedusha. There's a sense of Yesh, there's a state of Yesh, but it's a state of holy Yesh. Okay? Now that doesn't mean that down here it doesn't bring about a negative reality. But up there it's not negative. Okay. Let's read one more line, because it's 8:30. Read one more line so we stop with the Rebbe talking and not me. And then we'll go, there's a period 2 lines down, and then we'll go further. All right, so we now understand. The reason Shlomo Melech has to say that Mayim Rabim lo yuchel chavas es ha'ava is that I might think it would be able to douse the love of the Eibishter, because the source of the neshama is tikkun, the source of the Mayim Rabim is toyu. Toyu is a higher, more powerful place in reality, in godly reality. Therefore, I would think it has the ability to overcome and nullify the love of the neshama, which is sourced in tikkun. Okay, so Shlomo says, no, it doesn't. So now, of course, I have to understand, so why not? You just explained so well why it should, so the Gemara, when it has a question like that, what does it say? Ema hachinami. Wait, maybe you should say, indeed, that should be the case. Right? The Gemara will say, I had to say this because I might have a havamina ABC, and ABC is not true. So I have to say what I said in the Mishnah, or else I would have thought ABC, but ABC is not true, so I have to be, and the Mishnah tells me that. So then the Gemara often will say, Ema hachinami, well, wait, hold on. ABC seems perfectly reasonable. Why isn't ABC true? Maybe it really should be. That's what the Rebbe is saying here. Well, okay, so why not? Vatam lezeh hu k'mashikosav lifnei zeh, as has been said before this in Shir Shirim, rishafeha rishvei eish shal heves ka. It is a burning fire. The flame, a shal heves is a flame of Yud K. Okay, and now this is what Dr. November said earlier. Now, obviously, we have to understand this. Sheshorish and neshama va'ava misuter sheba, the source of the neshama and the hidden love in it, who is not really from tikkun, who ba'atzmas harein is from the essence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shalamai legami bechinas tayu, which is also higher than tayu. So since the true source of the neshama is higher than tayu, so then the neshama isn't affected. Okay, that's the basic answer. Now, of course, there's a rather obvious question that we'll ask before we stop. Wait, hold on a second. So what was this, all a game? Was it a trick? You're misleading misinformation in order to say there's a question, but the question is really a question, because that's not true. It doesn't come from tikkun, it comes from atzmus, but Shlomo Melech says what he says because you might think improperly that the neshama comes from tikkun, so then he tells you that don't worry, the Mayim Rabim can't wipe out the love of the neshama. But the neshama is not really from tikkun, so it's all a moot point. Well, what's that about? Oh, so that has to do with what we were talking about earlier when Dr. November said what he said. There is a level in which the source of the neshama really is Atzilus, and that's the revealed neshama in Eilam Hazeh. Like, what's the source of you and I in a revealed sense? Our parents, there's no question. What's our real source? Our real source, even in terms of your parent, who's your real source? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rochav, and Leah. You say it every day. That's who you really come from. And you want to go deeper? Who do you really, 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 really come from? In Gashmias? Adam and Chava. Everybody. Okay. Noach. Man, we come from Shem. Right? Okay. But even that ultimately is not the ultimate truth. Is that not true? No, that's true. Of course that's true. But it's not ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is, where do you come from? Atzmusa Yizbarach. You come from the Eibishter. Oh, okay. So we won't say. You come from the Eibishter, not your parents or your grandparents or your great, the opposite Nimas. No. Well, I do. I can't say I don't come from there. I say it every day in davening. I come from there. The only reason I can daven, the first thing I have to say when I'm introducing myself to a Kadosh Baruch Hu is, I can stand here with my feet together quietly and approach you. Why? Well, because I'm a Ben Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's my key in the door. Without that key, I can't get into the door I'm about to go into. Okay, true. But obviously, there's a higher level. So that's on a revealed level. What is the revealed source of the neshama? Atzilus. There's no question. So to speak, the neshama is the spitting image of Atzilus. That being said, there's an even deeper source, and it's because of the deeper source that the Mayim Rabim won't affect the neshama. But because of the revealed source, I might think it would, and that's what Shlomo Melech comes to say. Okay, so now we have to see what that's all about. And then the next thing in Dalet and Hey, the Rebbe is going to explain how not only does the Mayim Rabim not douse the love, ultimately the descent of the neshama into Mayim Rabim brings about an ascent for the neshama. Not that it doesn't descend, it actually is elevated. Now, of course, we're going to have to figure that out, because we just said the source of the neshama is Atzmus, and there isn't anything higher than Atzmus. So how does that elevation work? That's...
You're saying neshama, using it as a general term, or you actually specify?
The Nefesh Elokis, that's the neshama in general. Then your godly soul, where is it sourced?
There's 5 levels.
Say there's 5 levels of the soul. What does that mean? That it's ultimately your soul. Where did the 4 lower levels come from? The highest level, which is the 5th, or the 1st. Okay? If you're going from the top down, so everything is. And the essence of the soul, the essence of anything, is the essence of every level of that thing. The DNA of your brain is exactly the same as the DNA of your fingertip.
It's all connected.
Well, not only is it all connected, the essence of something is the essence of every single level of it. So it's not that the essence of the neshama is up there. The essence of the neshama is the essence of every single level of the soul, even those levels that are clothed in your body. Because that's what essence means. As opposed to revealed levels. Revealed levels are revealed only on the level they're revealed on. Right? So intellect is intellect, and movement is movement, and never the twain shall meet. They're 2 completely different powers of the soul. But in terms of the soul itself, in a more, what's powering your intellect? Your soul. What's powering your movement? Soul. It's all soul on a higher level. On a specific revealed level, those are 2 completely different levels of reality, and basically have nothing to do with each other. Okay, I can say obviously my brain teaches my hand how to play a concerto on the piano, okay, but movement is one thing and intellect is another. Okay. Toyu, remember Shir Sakeli. Write it down so you don't forget how Shir Sakeli works. Okay. Hey Doc.
Yes, sir.
We're waiting for you're a Pennsylvanian, right? You voted in Pennsylvania.
No, Florida resident.
Ah, okay, so
Yes, but my daughter's in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But I hate to tell you who she